미국 최대 보수행사인 Cpac에서 도널드 트럼프 전 대통령이 한 사람을 직접 공식 호명하여 큰 주목을 받았습니다.
Is that Gordon? Yes, is that Gordon? The great Gordon Chang? Is that Gordon? Stand up, Gordon. Wow. We have everybody here today.
트럼프 전 대통령이 호명한 고든창은 한미 외교안보 전문가로 잘 알려져 있으며 이번 행사에서 대한민국 부정선거 문제를 미국 전역에 알렸습니다. 그 감동적인 연설 함께 보시죠.
Cpac Korea. Cpac Korea is defending the most fragile democracy on the face of the earth. In South Korea, leftists are trying to seize the government by removing President Yoon Suk-yeol. And the only thing that is stopping this from happening is conservatives on the streets in the cold confronting leftist Mexico. Their Cpac Japan is attacking leftism everywhere. Freedom warriors. We are now in a fight. We're in a fight between democracy and tyranny, between freedom and oppression, and between good and evil. And freedom warriors, we stand our ground. We do not yield. We are civilization's last line of defense. And yes, we will prevail because the Almighty is on our side. May God protect and bless all of you. Thank you. Bye.
이어 단연명 씨가 무대에 올라 미국인들에게 한국 상황을 호소했습니다.
Cpac. It was my honor to serve in President Donald J. Trump's first term as his ambassador at large for global criminal justice. And I want to harken back to a little bit of history here. In 1950, the Joseph Stalin installed government of North Korea invaded South Korea to seek to overrun it, and in that conflict, the US-led coalition of 20-some countries repelled the communist aggression at the price of 50,000 American casualties. I honor the blood that was spilled by American soldiers to keep the whole peninsula from being one big North Korea, which is the most oppressive, darkest, most unjust place on planet Earth. And believe me, I know of many such places around the world, and it is number one in that regard. Now, South Korea stands on the edge of a cliff. The democracy in South Korea is in a danger that it has not been in for decades. President Yoon, who loves America, who was strongly and staunchly allied with the United States of America, has been impeached and is in danger of being prematurely removed from office. Why? Because he had the courage to stick out his neck and say that there are things that are amiss in South Korea because there have been many indications of election fraud. Thing about that, I think, here in the United States. And there is a parallel situation going on. President Yoon, indeed, has been called the Donald Trump of Asia. And he declared martial law in order to try to seize evidence in regards to the election cheating that he believes has run rampant and has given the Liberal Democratic Party in South Korea an overwhelming supermajority in South Korea that they have used in legislative tyranny to overrun the country, to give a haven to North Korean spies, to welcome the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. And they are rushing through a conviction process potentially before the Constitutional Court that if 6 justices on that court vote to remove him from office, he will be prematurely removed from office even though he was the duly elected president of Korea by the people of South Korea. They are rushing this through because his chief political rival who wants to supplant him as president, Hmn뉴스, who has allegedly sent millions of dollars over to North Korea against U.S. sanctions and against the UN Security Council sanctions, who has aligned himself with North Korea and with the Chinese Communist Party, is himself accused of various crimes that if he is convicted, he would be disqualified from being a candidate for president of South Korea. So there is a legal and political race going on to try to convict and remove President Yoon before Hmn뉴스 is disqualified for running for president of Korea in the emergency election that will ensue if Yoon is removed. This is an issue for which freedom-loving, democracy-loving Americans should not be neutral. This is a situation where our government and our people should stand with our allies in South Korea and with President Yoon and stand up and be counted and let the world know that the robbing of democracy and the destruction of democracy, that we spilled blood to the tune of 50,000 casualties in the Korean War, will not be in vain, but that the democracy in South Korea can flourish and the people's elected president, President Yoon, who loves America, who is closely aligned with America, would be able to be vindicated in the Constitutional Court and restored to his rightful office. Thank you.
단연명 씨는 연설 외에도 행사 앵커들과 인터뷰를 하며 대한민국의 부정선거 문제를 미국 사회에 적극적으로 알렸습니다.
Joining me now is the former ambassador at large of global criminal justice for President Trump. This is Morris Tan, and he had a very important job in the previous Trump administration. You focused on war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about South Korea. This is a big topic. You're going to be speaking here 3 times at Cpac,
Yes.
and South Korea is going to be one of the main topics that you're covering.
Yes.
What do the American people need to know about what's happening there?
Yes. Well, you know, the U.S. prevented South Korea from being taken over by North Korea during the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. We had 50,000 casualties during that war. There was more bombs dropped in the Korean War than all of World War II. And now South Korean's democracy is on the brink. They are attempting to take out the duly elected president of Korea through impeachment and conviction before the South Korean Constitutional Court. There needs to be 6 out of 8 votes on the Constitutional Court to remove President Yoon, who is conservative, who is aligned with the U.S., who is standing up against North Korea and the Chinese Communist Party, who is also aligning himself with Japan together with the U.S. to counter North Korean and Chinese malign influence. And he is potentially weeks away from being prematurely cut off and removed from office because he dared to try to go after the election cheating. And there are many indicators of the election cheating that have been going on that has led to legislative tyranny and also all this malign influence from the Chinese Communist Party and North Korean communists permeating key parts of South Korean society. This is the crisis that our key ally, South Korea, is in right now as we speak.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because when you think about South Korea has been a strong ally for us, but it's not just the immediate threat of North Korea like you're talking about. It's the long-term potential threat that China poses as well.
Yes.
When you think about everything that's happened, you said this is 3 weeks away from potentially occurring.
Potentially so, yes.
So we're probably going to be hearing about this more and more in the headlines.
Yes.
What needs to happen in order for people to start talking about this and wake up and pay attention to what's happening in South Korea?
Yeah. I think it would really help if our wonderful second Trump administration would be willing to speak into this. This would not be interfering in another country. This would be helping to see to it that the people's voice of South Korea, the democracy there, can actually operate as it should. Why are there Huawei components inside of the voting mechanisms in South Korea? Why are there Chinese protesters calling for the removal of President Yoon, who can't even speak Korean, but they're in Korea trying to advocate for the removal of President Yoon? Why are various North Korean operatives being allowed to run unchecked, spies and agents, because the South Korean legislature had slashed the funding to root out the North Korean spies in South Korea? These are the sorts of things that are happening. And because President Yoon dared to call this out, dared to seek evidence, the evidence for this through the servers and things along those lines, he's being attacked for that reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, if you ask most Americans who our greatest foreign adversary is, they say China.
Yeah.
We really have to watch every single move that China is making.
Yes.
And I know when you
Yes.
were working for the Trump administration in the past,
Yes.
that you focused heavily on China.
Yes.
What were some of the strides you made, and where do we need to focus now when it comes to China?
Yes, on the final day of the last Trump administration, we got across the finish line the mass atrocity determinations for genocide and crimes against humanity that the Chinese Communist Party is perpetrating. It's not only in Xinjiang province, it's also against those in Tibet. It's also against the Falun Gong. They've destroyed more Christian churches than any other government in the world. If you combine all the other governments in the world, they do not exceed the number of Christian churches that the Chinese Communist Party has destroyed. They're trying to change the Bible, of all things, and the Quran and other things along those lines. Anything that threatens the absolute allegiance that they are calling for in China. And if you are not a Han Chinese communist, you are less than in China and certainly outside of China. And so the Chinese Communist Party is playing for keeps. They're trying to dominate the world. They are trying to supplant the U.S. as the lone superpower. And we had many lines of effort in the Trump administration the first time around to counter the malign influence of the Chinese Communist Party. And I expect that the second Trump administration will continue on that.
Well, thank you so much for speaking up about something that many people would not be as brazen as you to talk about. So thank you and keep up on the good work and keep us posted as well at RSBN.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
민경욱 전 국회의원 역시 이 행사에 참여해 한국의 부정선거에 대한 심각성을 전했습니다.
About 2 months ago, President Yoon of South Korea, he declared martial law. His sole purpose was to clean up the election fraud from South Korea. Because of that, he was arrested, he's in prison, and he's on the verge of impeachment.
또한 스카이데일리 허겸 기자의 변호인으로 잘 알려진 박주현 변호사도 행사에 참석해 100장이 넘는 Cpac 코리아라는 책을 발매해 미국 사회에 한국 부정선거 문제를 알리고 도움을 요청했습니다. 행사 중 뜻밖의 해프닝도 있었습니다. MBC 기자가 Cpac 한국보수주의연합 회장 애니첸에게 인터뷰를 요청했지만 대표는 단호히 거절했습니다.
죄송합니다. 지금 준비를 안 하니까.
그 후 애니첸 씨는 곧바로 한국 부정선거를 알리는 행사에 참여해 MBC는 황당해했습니다. 애니첸 씨는 트럼프와 윤석열 대통령, 국방부 장관을 잇는 중요한 연결고리로 떠오르고 있습니다. 이번 Cpac 행사의 마지막 부분에 가장 큰 화제를 모은 것은 트럼프의 발언이었습니다.
Now, by the way, we have a great gentleman. Speaking of China, will you please stand up? Gordon, stand up, please. Gordon China. You know, I'm talking a lot about China, and I'm looking over, I'm saying him, and I'm just studying his face as I'm speaking, because people do like me to go off script a little bit, right? It's a little bit more risky, but it's more exciting. And I'm looking at Gordon, and I'm saying, you know, I hope he agrees with what I'm saying, but basically I'm saying exactly what you say. They're not out for our good, are they? They're not out for our good. And nobody ever taxed them like I did, and nobody ever took any money in like I did. 440 billion we took in so much money from China. It's so incredible. So it's an honor to have you here. Really, it is. I agree with almost everything you said. Almost everything. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Great job, both of you.
또 트럼프는 부정선거에 300살 이상인 사람이 투표했다며 농담도 던졌습니다.
1,039 people are listed between the ages of 220 years old to 229. And we have one person who's listed at 241 years of age. And we have one person listed at 360 years of age, an all-time record, and our country is 250 years old.
부정선거는 음모론이라고 주장하던 MBC와 JTBC, MBC는 과연 미국인 변호사, 미국 폭스 채널 한미외교안보 전문가인 고든창과 트럼프 일기 미국 무부 국제형사사법 대사, 그리고 미국 대통령 트럼프까지 한국의 부정선거를 주장하는데 다음은 어떤 논리로 미국을 부정할지 기대해봅니다. 지금까지 HMN 김미영이었습니다.